Hi you all and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we'll be sketching this street view from some village in France using inks and watercolors. So I have already laid out a rough sketch for this painting, and the technique which we are going to be using is wet on wet. So for today's video, I thought to just talk about this technique, and while you watch this, let's get some information about wet on wet watercolor technique. So it's like a dance party for your paints. You start by wetting your paper with some water, kind of like giving it a splash. This helps the paint to spread and blend nicely. Once the paper is damp and ready, you can start adding your watercolor pigments. It's like dropping the color onto the wet canvas and watching them do their own thing. The wet surface makes the color mix and mingle in all sorts of cool ways, sort of giving it like a dreamy effect. The best part about this technique is that it's a bit wild and unpredictable. You never really know how the color will behave and interact. It's like they have their own mind and they can surprise you in very unexpected results. It adds a fun and spontaneous element to your artwork. You can use wet on wet to paint skies, waters, and other things that needs a sense of flow and movement. The color blends together smoothly, giving it a sense of depth and atmosphere, and it's perfect for creating a beautiful watercolor washes that can just make you go wow. If you want to have some control over the painting, you can also lift off the paint or blot certain areas while they are still wet. Talking about a few things that we need to keep in mind while using wet on wet technique is first being that timing is the key. Work quickly once you have wetted the paper. If the surface dries too much, the paint won't spread and blend as easily. Next, being paper quality matters. Different papers absorb and react to water in different ways. So, experimenting with different brands and textures to see what works best for you is important. Heavier watercolor papers tend to hold better and better with wet on wet techniques. Next is that we need to start with lighter colors. It's easier to blend and add more pigments than to lighten a color which is already on the paper. So begin with light washes and gradually build up the intensity as it is needed. So fourth thing that we need to keep in mind is use enough pigment. Since the paint will spread on the wet surface, make sure that you are using enough pigment with water to achieve the desired color. Next thing which we need to consider is that we need to mind the edges because wet on wet technique tends to create soft edges and blended transitions. If you want to maintain the crisp edge or specific details, you can mask these areas using masking fluid or using dry brush to lift off some paint before it dries. Next thing which we need to consider is practice control and restraint. While wet on wet technique allows for beautiful spontaneity, it is also important to maintain some control over the process. Avoid overworking the paints or adding too many layers as it can lead to muddy results. Next is embrace the happy accidents. Mistakes or unexpected color interactions can happen on wet technique, but don't let them discourage you and embrace them as happy accidents and find creative ways to incorporate them into your artwork. Wet on wet watercolor is all about experimentation and finding your own style. So have fun, play around, and let the water and pigments guide you in your artistic journey. Also, if you have any other thoughts or your words of advice, please share them in the comment section. And now I will let you enjoy the rest of the painting process. So that's it for today's video, and I hope it has turned out to be helpful and you enjoyed the process. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.